Chosen one. Listen carefully. There is a sound stirring in the unseen realms around you. It's not the sound of wind, nor the whisper of people. It's the movement of two kingdoms. Heaven and hell have both turned their gaze toward you. Like two mighty rivers rushing toward the same crossroad where you stand. You didn't find this message by accident. The screen glowing before you right now is not coincidence. This is a divine interruption, a moment designed for your spirit, not your schedule. There are moments in life when everything goes still, just so one voice can be heard. And this is that moment. Remember Arya. She once woke in the middle of the night, her heart racing, her hands trembling. She couldn't explain why the numbers 4, 44, and 11, 11 kept appearing everywhere on clocks, receipts, and screens. All she knew was that something beyond her understanding was watching. Angels had encamped around her, and darkness had drawn near to test her resolve. She didn't know it then, but she was chosen just like you. You felt it too, haven't you? That you don't fit in like everyone else. That the world's patterns never seem to match your rhythm. That pain followed you too early, too sharply. But what looked like punishment was actually protection. The chosen are hidden until they're ready to be revealed. Picture yourself as a drop of oil sealed in a jar, kept away from the sun. To outsiders, it seems forgotten, useless, but when the appointed time comes, that oil will be poured into a lamp, and the flame will blaze across the darkness. That flame is you. Without realizing it, you've caused panic in the kingdom of darkness. Every time you forgave instead of revenging, every time you held on when others gave up, every time you chose love instead of bitterness, a sound went out in heaven. Demons flinched. Angels took formation. The Father leaned forward and whispered, "That one belongs to me." Enter. Arya once believed her loneliness was punishment. She didn't know it was heaven's training ground. Silence was shaping her spirit. Pain was perfecting her faith. Every scar was a signature of preparation. And the same is true for you. Don't confuse weariness with weakness. Even warriors tremble before the final strike. Your fatigue isn't failure, it's evidence that you've been fighting unseen battles and still standing. We read in the book of Psalms, chapter 34, verse 7, "The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them." Those words are not poetry, they're a present reality. Even now, unseen light surrounds you. The presence of God has gone before you, guarding, guiding, waiting for your awakening. If something inside you stirs as you hear this, it isn't coincidence, it's confirmation. You're not losing your mind, you're finding your mission. Take a breath. Let this truth settle deep. This isn't performance, it's alignment. Heaven is watching how you respond. And if your heart knows this is for you, leave a simple sign type 17 below. It's not superstition, it's a prophetic act. The number of completion, the mark of new beginnings. When you do, it's like lighting a beacon that says, "I hear, I'm ready." And if this message touches your spirit, share it. Let it move through you to someone who might be fighting their own invisible war. And stay connected. Like, share, subscribe, not as a ritual, but as a declaration. I choose the light. Because right now, both heaven and hell are watching your next move. And know this, you were never created to be silent in a world that's burning. Your voice carries the frequency of deliverance. When you speak truth, heaven amplifies it. When you walk in love, darkness loses ground. You are not just surviving this war, you are shaping it. Every prayer you whisper in secret shakes the unseen walls that surround generations. So rise again. Chosen one, lift your eyes above the noise. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead breathes inside you. You don't need to chase validation. You were already validated by the one who called you. The battles that once broke you are now the proof of your authority. You have been forged in fire for such a time as this. And as you step forward, remember, you are not stepping alone. Heaven's armies march with you. Angels bearing swords of light. The story is only beginning, and this time, victory carries your name. From the moment you drew your first breath, the unseen realm took notice. You were not just born, you were announced. A name spoken in heaven and instantly echoed in hell. Some are born to exist, others to awaken movements. You, chosen one, belong to the latter. Before anyone called you by your earthly name, you were already known by a sound in eternity. The Spirit had whispered your destiny long before your parents dreamed of you. That is why certain storms came so early. It wasn't random, it was resistance. Every life marked by divine purpose attracts opposition from birth. Arya's story began the same way. The night she was born, her mother dreamed of a lion standing guard by the window. Years later, that same lion appeared again, not in sight, but in spirit. Whenever fear tried to suffocate her, what her family thought was imagination was revelation. The hand of heaven had already drawn a circle of fire around her cradle. You too were marked before the world saw you. While others learned how to fit in, you were shaped to stand out. Your sensitivity, your awareness, your constant feeling that something more is calling. All of it is evidence of that mark. The chosen often carry a tension inside them. The world calls them strange, but heaven calls them necessary. This is why your life never quite made sense through ordinary logic. When they ran, you paused. When they laughed, you listened. When they gave up, you kept searching. You've always been drawn to the edge of the invisible, sensing what others ignore. That is not weakness, it is the antenna of your spirit. In every generation, heaven sets apart certain souls to carry light where others cannot see. You are one of them. The war over your life is proof of your assignment. The enemy would not invest so much energy in you if you were insignificant. Look back carefully. How many times should you have been destroyed emotionally, physically, mentally, but somehow you survived? That survival is not luck, it's lineage. The bloodline of grace runs through you. You carry ancestral prayers never fulfilled, promises made to your forefathers that now find a vessel in you. There are seasons when being chosen feels like being cursed. You ask, why me? Why the pressure? Why the endless waiting? But what feels like delay is divine calibration. You cannot rush a masterpiece. God was not withholding from you. He was withholding you, saving you for a moment that required your kind of strength. In the early years of her life, Arya faced repeated rejection. Doors slammed, relationships fractured. Dreams slipped away just as she touched them. She thought she was cursed, but heaven had hidden her like a seed in winter soil. Beneath the silence, roots were growing. That's how destiny operates hidden until harvest. Chosen one. If you could see the spiritual blueprint over your life, you would weep. Every detour, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer was mapped with precision. You were being prepared, not punished. Heaven knew that to carry the authority you now hold, your heart needed both tenderness and endurance. As it is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 49, verse 1, "The Lord called me before my birth, from within the womb. He called me by name." These words reach across ages to find you. They speak of predestined purpose, a calling that existed before your first cry. You were known before you were seen. The same hand that shaped galaxies has been shaping your life. Patiently, intentionally. Every scar you carry is evidence that you were chosen early. Every betrayal was training in discernment. Every delay was strengthening your patience. Every loss carved space for greater gain. You've been walking through fire not to be consumed, but to be refined. When heaven marks you, it also hides you. Your path may seem slower than others, but that's because it's being written by eternal hands. Temporary minds cannot understand eternal timing. The same God who wrote galaxies with patience is crafting your story in the same rhythm, deliberate, majestic, unstoppable. Arya eventually learned that her difference was her assignment. The pain she carried became the message she preached without words. She was not designed to blend in. She was designed to disrupt. And so are you. Your very existence is a contradiction to darkness. You are proof that light cannot be silenced. If you feel unseen right now, take comfort. The unseen realm has already seen you. Heaven's records bear your name. Angels have memorized your path. Every sigh, every cry, every whisper you've uttered in the night, none of it was lost. You are known completely, protected completely, loved completely. You were not marked to be perfect. You were marked to be purposeful. The war over your life is simply the echo of how valuable your calling truly is. Every chosen soul carries a trail of battles that others can't see. The fight began long before you had words to describe it. The enemy knew the danger of your awakening, that if you ever discovered who you truly are, his grip would shatter. That's why your childhood held chaos. Why your peace was attacked before you even found your voice. Arya once asked, "Why does it always hurt before it gets better?" The answer came slowly, not in a voice, but in patterns. Every storm that came to destroy her actually exposed another layer of strength. She learned that pain was not punishment, it was permission. Permission to rise. Permission to remember her authority. You've been through moments where betrayal felt like a knife, and silence felt like a grave. You've watched people promise loyalty and vanish when the fire came. But every desert season was crafting discernment inside you. You began to see what eyes of flesh cannot. You learned to recognize spirits behind smiles, motives behind words. That is a gift, not paranoia, but perception refined by tears. Chosen one. Your discernment is your defense. The darkness fears what you can see. That's why confusion often hovers near you, not because you are lost, but because the enemy hopes to cloud what heaven is revealing. Arya had nights when she almost gave in. She thought she had lost everything, her confidence, her hope, her direction. But on one of those nights, as she sat beneath a flickering lamp, a quiet thought came. If there is still breath, there is still purpose. That thought wasn't her own. It was heaven breaking through the noise. You've had similar moments, haven't you? A time when everything inside screamed, "I can't go on." Yet somehow you did. That strength didn't come from logic, it came from legacy. Your spirit remembered what your mind forgot. You were built to endure. The war intensified because your potential multiplied. The closer you move toward your divine timing, the louder the opposition becomes. Hell invests its loudest voices right before heaven releases its greatest victories. That's why, lately, distractions have multiplied, people testing your patience. Unexpected losses. Strange fatigue. It's all an attempt to pull your focus away from your rising. Do not be deceived by the chaos. War in the spirit realm is often disguised as pressure in the physical one. The more resistance you feel, the more heaven is shifting around you. You are standing in the epicenter of your spiritual turning point. We find in the book of Micah, chapter 7, verse 8, "Though I have fallen, I will rise, though I sit in darkness. The Lord will be my light." You see, falling does not disqualify you. Staying down does. Heaven doesn't measure your worth by how clean your journey looks, but by how fiercely you rise again. The enemy trembles at the sound of your rising because every time you get back up, you prove his failure permanent. There's a reason you've been misunderstood. The chosen often speak a language the average soul cannot decode. You talk in vision, others hear in logic. You dream in fire, they live in fear. And so, you walk lonely roads not because you're rejected, but because your frequency doesn't fit smaller spaces anymore. Arya realized that too. She stopped explaining herself to people who hadn't survived what she had. She learned that not everyone is meant to understand divine assignments. Some are only meant to witness them. That's your truth as well. You were never meant to convince. You were meant to become. Every delay, every disappointment, every betrayal has been fertilizer for your anointing. You are standing at the threshold of revelation. The version of you that is about to emerge will not resemble the one that entered the storm. Now pause. Let this truth settle. Heaven never wastes pain. Every sleepless night has purpose. Every unanswered question has direction hidden within it. You are still on course, even when you feel lost. So, if this message reaches the deepest part of you, let heaven hear your agreement. Type "light winds" below 2 simple words, but they carry eternal weight, because when you write them, you're not typing a phrase, you're declaring a verdict. You're telling every dark force still lingering near your story, you had your chance. The light wins always. That's the anthem of the chosen. The fall was never your ending, it was your awakening. And what rises from the ashes, this time, won't just survive, it will reign. And when you declare those words, "light wins," you're not merely typing on a screen, you're stepping into agreement with heaven itself. Every syllable becomes a signal in the spirit, summoning strength, summoning angels, reminding darkness that your story was never meant to end in shadows. There are moments when silence becomes the loudest sermon. You've had those nights lying awake, staring into the dark, wondering why heaven seemed quiet while everything inside you screamed for answers. But what you called silence was actually shelter. The hidden hand of God was moving, not absent. Arya didn't understand that at first. She mistook stillness for abandonment. When the world went silent, she thought heaven had turned its back. But she later learned that silence was strategy. God wasn't ignoring her, he was insulating her. The same hand that parted seas sometimes builds walls of stillness to protect the chosen from premature exposure. You have walked through that same hidden season. Doors didn't open. People disappeared. Plans fell apart. It was as if life pressed pause without explanation. Yet every closed door was divine choreography. Every unanswered prayer, an act of mercy. You were not forgotten, you were being fortified. Sometimes, God hides you because the world is not ready for your unveiling. The anointing on your life is too rare to be handled by careless hands. So, he allows misunderstanding to cloak you. He lets obscurity become your armor. When you think you're being overlooked, you're actually being guarded. Arya once felt trapped in a season that seemed endless. Nothing moved. Every attempt failed. Every hope delayed. But beneath the surface, heaven was building roots deep, quiet, unshakable. Like a tree planted by unseen waters, she was growing in places no one could see. And then, when the time was right, the soil cracked open and light broke through. Chosen one. Understand this, what you call waiting. Heaven calls preparation. You're not stuck, you're being strengthened. Every moment of stillness is an invitation to trust, to listen, to recalibrate. The silence you resent may be the very thing preserving your strength for the next command. The world teaches speed, the Spirit teaches timing. Heaven is never in a hurry because eternity doesn't rush. When God builds slowly, it's because He's constructing something that cannot collapse. And that's what He's doing with you, establishing foundations too deep for storms to move. There is a reason you've been hidden. The hidden ones are often the most dangerous to darkness. While others chase attention, you've been learning obedience. While others build platforms, you've been building roots. That's why, when the shaking comes, and it always comes, you'll still stand. As declared in the book of Psalms, chapter 91, verse 1. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. No, these words are not metaphor, they are a map. Dwelling in the shelter means trusting when you cannot trace Him. Resting when you cannot reason with what's happening. The shadow of the Almighty may feel dark, but it's not the darkness of absence, it's the covering of protection. Look back at the times you thought you were alone. Can you see now how something unseen kept you from collapse? That job you lost wasn't punishment, it was redirection. That relationship that ended wasn't rejection, it was preservation. The silence between your prayers and their answers was not divine neglect, but divine restraint. God waited because He knew what you didn't. Arya came to realize that her quiet season wasn't wasted time, it was sacred training. In that silence, she learned the language of heaven, not in noise, but in nuance. She learned to sense the shift of peace, the whisper of warning, the rhythm of divine timing. That is what the hidden season does. It transforms reaction into revelation. You, too, are being refined in the quiet. When heaven seems silent, it's teaching you to hear differently. You begin to recognize guidance not in thunder, but in stillness. Not in lightning, but in light itself. The chosen are trained to trust whispers because they carry responsibilities too sacred for noise. So while others rush toward visibility, remain content in your cocoon. The butterfly never fights the cocoon, it trusts the pressure to prepare its wings. When the time comes, you won't need to announce yourself. Heaven will reveal you. And when that moment arrives, everything that once hid you will now highlight you. You're not late. You're right on time. Heaven's time. And when that unveiling happens, it will be quiet, no fireworks, no crowd, just divine alignment. Suddenly, what once resisted you will recognize you. People who overlooked you will be drawn to your light, not knowing they are witnessing fulfillment, not fame. Heaven's timing never shouts, it simply arrives. So rest in that assurance. The silence has an expiration date, and when it ends, purpose will speak louder than explanation. You will not need to prove yourself, the fruit of your faith will do it for you. You've felt it, that quiet shift within you. The air around your life has started to change. You walk into places and the atmosphere feels different. That's not pride. It's presence. When light enters a room, everything hidden is forced to show itself. Darkness recognizes authority before humans do. Arya noticed it too. One morning she went to work and could feel eyes on her. Not of judgment, but of curiosity. People could sense something new about her, even if they couldn't name it. What had changed was invisible. Her light had grown stronger. The same will happen to you. When the flame of purpose burns inside you, it needs no announcement. It simply shines. But with light comes resistance. The enemy doesn't fight what doesn't threaten him. If your life feels like a battlefield lately, it's because your presence unsettled darkness. You carry something pure in a polluted world. That purity is your weapon. Your smile, your forgiveness, your peace. Each one is a sword drawn in silence. There will be times you'll feel that tension. The air grows heavy. Words cut deeper. People misunderstand your kindness. That's when you must remember, light doesn't compete with darkness, it transforms it. You don't have to fight every battle. Sometimes you simply have to keep shining. As the Word of God declares in the book of James, chapter 4, verse 7, "Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." This is not about shouting louder, it's about standing firmer. Submission is not weakness, it's alignment. When your heart stays aligned with heaven, even the whispers of darkness lose their power. Arya once asked, "How do I keep shining when I feel empty?" The answer came softly, "You stay connected to the source." A lamp does not create its own light. It only carries what flows from the current. That is what you are, a vessel through which light travels. When you connect daily with the source, you never run out. And here is a truth that changes everything. Light shared is never lost. When you light another candle, your own flame does not dim, it doubles. That's the beauty of divine exchange. Giving, sharing, supporting, they are not losses, they are multiplications. If these words have touched your spirit, if they have reminded you of who you are, then consider this. You can help keep this flame alive for others. Every story, every message, every whisper of hope that reaches someone lost in the dark begins as a small act of faith, one light helping another. Maybe your light today is a kind comment, a shared message, a quiet prayer. Maybe it's something more tangible, a seed sown to help this space continue shining brighter. When you choose to give, it isn't a transaction, it's participation. You become part of the chain of light stretching across souls and screens, nations and nights. Think of it like this. Somewhere, right now. Another soul like you is sitting in silence, scrolling through shadows, needing a word that says, "You're not forgotten." When you choose to like or share this message, it's like releasing a firefly into the night, small, yet capable of guiding someone home. And if this space has become a place where your soul exhales, subscribe, not out of habit, but as a promise to keep returning to the well. Subscribing is like marking a path in the forest so you can find your way back when the world grows loud again. If your heart ever whispers to give, donate, not as duty, but as devotion. Think of it as pouring a drop of oil into a lantern so it can keep burning for others still searching through fog. Your giving is not demanded, it's invited. Like offering warmth to a traveler you may never meet. There's no condition, no pressure, just gratitude. Every seed of generosity, whether a prayer, a share, or a single coin, becomes part of a harvest that heaven multiplies unseen. Arya once said, "The day I gave from my lack was the day I discovered I had never lacked at all." That's how giving works. It opens a door where you thought there was only a wall. So let your kindness be oil, your encouragement be flame, and your generosity be light, spilled forward. Together, we keep this beacon alive, not for applause, but for awakening. And as the light expands, so does your own. And as this light continues to travel from heart to heart, it gathers momentum. What began as a whisper becomes a wave. Soon, even the silence will glow proof that one flame, when shared, can set eternity alight. There comes a point in every chosen soul's journey when identity stops being a question and becomes a revelation. You've wrestled long enough with who you are, why you're different, and why you seem to carry both the weight and wonder of heaven at the same time. But now, the fog begins to lift. Arya faced this same awakening. She had spent years trying to fit into the molds that others carved for her: student, employee, friend, daughter, but none of them felt like home. Every title felt too small for her spirit. It wasn't arrogance, it was truth knocking at the door of her destiny. You've felt that same discomfort, haven't you? The feeling that even good things still don't quite fit. That's because you were never designed to fit. You were designed to flow. Heaven didn't build you for boxes, it built you for rivers. Your identity isn't a label, it's a current. When you move with divine purpose, everything stagnant in your life begins to break loose. There's a sacred tension between who you were and who you're becoming. It feels like standing between mirrors, one showing who you've been, the other revealing who you are meant to be. The space between them is uncomfortable, but it's also holy. In that space, the enemy whispers the loudest. He tells you your difference is dysfunction, that your calling is confusion. But he lies because he fears what you're becoming. You're learning to carry light with awareness, and awareness is dangerous to darkness. Arya once wrote, "I am tired of explaining my light to people committed to misunderstanding it." That line became her liberation. She stopped apologizing for her fire. You must do the same. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Your identity doesn't need permission to shine. You are heaven's fingerprint on earth, a unique pattern of light that cannot be copied. When God formed you, He didn't make a duplicate. You were sculpted for a mission that cannot be reassigned. That's why the attacks on your sense of worth have been so relentless. The enemy can't destroy your calling, so he tries to confuse your confidence. It was proclaimed in the book of Romans. Chapter 8, verse 16. The Spirit Himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Oh, these words hold power. You are not defined by what you've done, what you've lost, or what you fear. You are defined by the Spirit that lives within you, and that Spirit carries royal blood, not metaphorically, but spiritually. The journey of identity always involves stripping away false names. Names like unworthy, too much, not enough. Heaven has never called you that. Heaven's vocabulary speaks in terms of destiny, not deficiency. It calls you chosen, anointed, sent. Arya once felt torn between compassion and calling. She wanted to love everyone, yet couldn't ignore the fire inside her. Eventually, she realized the two were never separate. Her compassion was her weapon, her fire was her love made visible. And maybe that's you too, learning that your tenderness is not weakness. It's divine power wrapped in gentleness. The world may mock your empathy, but heaven celebrates it. Only those who've been wounded deeply can carry healing honestly. The more you understand who you are, the less you'll chase validation. You'll stop explaining divine things to unspiritual ears. You'll stop mistaking quiet seasons for rejection. You'll begin to walk in peace even while the battle still rages. Because peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the awareness of authority. Let this settle in your spirit. Identity isn't discovered through striving, it's revealed through surrender. The moment you stop trying to be something and simply yield to what God already called you, clarity begins to flow. Arya once stood before a mirror, whispered her own name, and said, "I forgive you for forgetting who you are." It was small, but it changed everything. It was her way of saying, "I remember now." And maybe today is your moment to remember. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply being rebuilt into the version heaven saw from the start. Pause right now. Take one deep breath. You are breathing proof that God still has plans for you. The war for your identity is fierce, but victory has already been written. If this truth resonates deep in you, I want you to mark this moment, not as emotion, but as remembrance. Type Ma'ava Khatesra below. It's not superstition, it's symbolism, a prophetic number representing unity between your spirit, soul, and purpose. When you write it, you're declaring alignment. I am one with what heaven says I am. Because identity isn't earned, it's remembered. You're not becoming someone new, you're becoming someone true. And every day you choose light over confusion, obedience over opinion, peace over panic. You step closer to the version of you that hell hoped would never emerge. Arya learned it. You're learning it. And heaven is watching, smiling, whispering. Finally, they remember who they are. The atmosphere around you has changed, though you can't quite explain how. It's subtle, like a shift in the wind before a storm. You feel things you can't describe. Sense movements in the invisible. Catch whispers in moments of stillness. This is not imagination. It's the evidence of the clash happening around your life, angels and shadows moving in real time, contending for your obedience. Arya first noticed it through dreams. Some nights, she'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, with a presence she couldn't name pressing against her chest. Other times, she'd feel a peace so deep it could silence her thoughts. Two worlds meeting in one body, heaven reaching. hell resisting. She didn't yet realize that her prayers were coordinates, directing angels into battle. The unseen war is not poetic symbolism. It's a living conflict fought in dimensions your eyes cannot perceive. Every act of faith releases movement. Every word of doubt releases resistance. You are not a bystander in this war. You are the battlefield and the prize. Sometimes it shows up as chaos in your day. You're calm one moment and overwhelmed the next. People act strange. Emotions rise without reason. Timing falls apart. These are not coincidences. The enemy's greatest weapon is distraction to make you forget that this is spiritual, not situational. Arya learned that lesson painfully. She once fought with everyone around her, thinking they were the problem. Only later did she realize the real battle wasn't with people, it was for her peace. Every argument was an attempt to pull her focus from the assignment. When she began to pray instead of react, the confusion lifted like fog. The spiritual realm responds to authority, not anxiety, and your authority grows each time you choose peace over panic, patience over retaliation. Heaven moves when you move in alignment. As it is written in the book of Daniel, chapter 10, verse 12, "Do not be afraid, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them." That verse reveals a mystery. Your prayers don't vanish into the air, they travel. They pierce dimensions. From the moment faith leaves your lips, movement begins. But sometimes, as with Daniel, the answer is delayed, not denied. Forces of darkness try to block what heaven has already released. And while you wait, angels war on your behalf. If you could see what happens when you pray, you'd never stop. Your whispered plea at midnight is a command in heaven's language. Every "help me" echoes as "deploy" in angelic ranks. You may not hear swords clashing, but the shift you feel in your spirit, that's the resonance of battle. Arya once fasted for 3 days, seeking clarity. During that time, her dreams intensified. She saw flashes of light and shadow, heard rushing winds in her sleep. The message came clear: you are not fighting for survival anymore. You are fighting for territory. That's when she understood spiritual warfare isn't just about defense, it's about dominion. Chosen one. The enemy's obsession with you isn't fear of your past, it's fear of your potential. He knows what happens when you walk in full obedience. Territories shift. Families heal. Generations break free. That's why the attacks are personal, because your influence is prophetic. Sometimes, heaven lets you feel the pressure so you can learn to wield the power. Authority is not granted through comfort, it's formed in combat. The friction you feel is heaven's training ground, teaching your spirit to recognize the sound of victory even in the noise of war. And though this battle surrounds you, do not mistake it for chaos. It is choreography. Every moment of resistance refines your awareness. Every delay strengthens your discernment. You are being trained not just to survive this war, but to command it. Arya eventually stopped fearing the shadows. She began to sense when spiritual pressure was near, and instead of panicking, she would smile and whisper, "I see you, but I'm not moving." That's authority, not denial, but dominion. So when the tension rises, don't assume something's wrong. Often, it means something's right. Heaven and hell Only wrestle where something valuable resides. And you, chosen one, are the treasure both realms have marked. Stay aware, not afraid. The unseen is not against you, it's unfolding for you. And remember, this truth awareness is not fear, it's preparation. When you recognize the war, you stop reacting and start reigning. You walk through the fire, unshaken, because you finally understand. The flames were never meant to burn you. They were meant to reveal what cannot be consumed. There are moments in life when mercy becomes visible not as light in the sky, but as delay in your story. You thought you were being held back, punished, or forgotten. Yet heaven was holding time still, shielding you from consequences you couldn't yet see. Your prayers, your tears, your quiet obedience, they have held back storms that were meant to strike. Arya didn't realize that her intercession had power until she saw it in hindsight. Years after, she began praying for her family. One by one, they began to shift, not dramatically, but quietly, as if unseen hands were rearranging their paths. What she called waiting was actually divine delay. Mercy was standing between her loved ones and judgment. That's what mercy does. It stands in the gap when justice should fall. It pauses the clock and says, "Not yet. There's still hope." When heaven looks at a chosen one who continues to pray in pain, it bends time to make room for redemption. There were days you felt forgotten, but you were actually being interceded for. The very breath of Christ, who lives to intercede, was echoing through your groans. Every time you whispered a name in prayer, heaven heard more than a plea. It heard prophecy. Your love delayed destruction. Sometimes, mercy looks like unanswered prayers. You wanted that door to open, but heaven knew it would lead to loss. You cried for someone to stay, but heaven saw what their presence would cost your peace. The silence wasn't neglect, it was negotiation. God was protecting you from what you thought you needed. Arya once prayed for a relationship to be restored. She fasted, wept, begged, but heaven stayed silent. A year later, she learned that the person she wanted back had chosen a path that would have broken her completely. What felt like rejection was rescue in disguise. According to the book of Nahum, chapter 1, verse 7, the Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him. 1. Those words are not abstract comfort, they are a promise wrapped in presence. Every time you thought you were alone, that verse was happening in real time. God was being your refuge. Even when you didn't recognize the shelter you stood under. Mercy is not weakness. It is the might of heaven choosing compassion over condemnation. It's the moment when divine justice steps aside and whispers, "There's still purpose in this one. Give them another chance." You, chosen one, have been the reason mercy stayed. Your prayers have built invisible walls around people who didn't even believe. Your obedience has delayed the enemy's access to entire generations. You are not just fighting for yourself, you are standing as a barrier between heaven's patience and hell's plan. Arya once saw this truth play out vividly. Her younger brother was spiraling, lost in anger and addiction. She nearly gave up hope. But one night, while praying in her room, she saw a picture in her mind. Him standing at a cliff's edge, and a golden light wrapping around him like a hand pulling him back. Weeks later, without knowing why, he broke down and sought help. That's how mercy moves quietly, suddenly, undeniably. Even now, there are things in motion because of your prayers that you may never witness, delays that are saving lives, disruptions that are divine interventions. Heaven does not always send answers wrapped in beauty. Sometimes they come disguised as confusion. But make no mistake, mercy is working. When you think nothing's happening, mercy is negotiating behind the scenes. When you feel unworthy, mercy is arguing your case. When you're too tired to pray, mercy is remembering your last prayer and carrying it forward. And though you may never see every outcome, one day you will stand on the other side of this story and realize how many disasters never reached you, not because you were lucky, but because heaven intervened. Mercy isn't passive. It's an active force holding back destruction so purpose can breathe. So, walk in gratitude, not guilt. The same mercy that shielded you is now flowing through you. You are a living reminder that judgment paused and grace prevailed. And someday, you'll understand that mercy didn't just protect you, it prepared you. Every delay was sharpening your discernment, teaching you to see beyond what glitters and to value what grows slowly. You were learning to recognize blessings, not by how they appear, but by how they endure. So now, when heaven pauses again, don't panic. Wait with awareness. Mercy may be shifting pieces you can't yet see, aligning what your prayers once set in motion. Trust that every holy delay is proof that you are still covered. Every story reaches a crossroad, a place where neutrality no longer works. You can't walk both paths forever. One leads toward obedience, the other toward avoidance. And though heaven is patient, the war in the spirit demands a decision. You've stood between conviction and comfort long enough. The time to choose has arrived. Arya faced her own crossroad in a quiet evening. She had been living halfway, praying, but still hesitating, believing, but still holding back control. She wanted destiny, but feared surrender. One night, as she prayed, she felt a question echo inside her. Do you trust me enough to obey even when it costs? It wasn't thunder, it was truth. The moment she said yes, peace entered like a flood. That's what obedience does. It doesn't erase fear. It replaces it with clarity. The struggle within you right now isn't confusion, it's conviction. You already know what God is asking. The only thing left is response. Many people wait for signs, confirmations, and coincidences. But the chosen recognize that silence can be the sign. Heaven doesn't need to repeat what it's already revealed. The question is not whether God has spoken, it's whether you will move. Arya learned that partial obedience is still disobedience. She tried to delay small steps, thinking they didn't matter. But every delay made her spirit heavier. The longer she waited, the quieter heaven became. It wasn't anger, it was withdrawal. Because mercy delays judgment, but it doesn't delay instruction. The voice of God declares in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. These words cut through hesitation like light through fog. They remind you that obedience isn't about confidence in yourself, it's about confidence in His presence. When God sends you, He goes with you. The path may shake, but His promise never does. You've probably felt that pull, that quiet stirring, that something must change. The friendships that drain your peace, the habits that numb your fire, the fears that make you hide your light. They've been exposed not to shame you, but to invite you higher. Heaven reveals what it intends to heal. Arya found freedom the moment she stopped negotiating with what God said to release. She realized that obedience isn't about losing something, it's about gaining space for what's meant to come. You cannot receive with closed fists. Letting go isn't weakness, it's warfare. It's how you tell darkness, "You don't own me anymore." And when you finally decide, everything shifts. The atmosphere responds to conviction. Angels move faster around decisive hearts. Authority rises inside you like a tide. That's why hell loves hesitation. It feeds on delay. But once you say yes, hesitation dies, and heaven begins to build on your word. Arya noticed this immediately. Opportunities appeared where doors had long been locked. Relationships realigned. Her peace returned. Her strength multiplied. Not because she earned it, but because obedience opened the flow. What was once chaos became clarity. That's what surrender does. It brings order to the unseen. Chosen one. Don't underestimate this moment. Heaven doesn't repeat invitations indefinitely. The longer you stand still, the more ground you surrender. But the second you move, the second you say yes, the war begins to tilt in your favor. If this message ignites something in you, that deep, trembling, knowing that it's time, then mark it with declaration. Type, "My answer stands." Just 3 words. Yet they carry weight beyond sound. They echo upward, signaling to heaven and every watching power of darkness, I have decided. I will not turn back. Undring, when you write it, let it be more than text. Let it be an altar, a place where indecision dies and destiny begins. Because obedience isn't built on comfort, it's built on courage. Your hesitation ends here. The war over your will ends with surrender. The story of obedience begins now. And when you type, "My answer stands," you're not just commenting, you're consecrating. Those 3 words are more than syllables. They're a spiritual signature. In the unseen realm, they become coordinates, marking you as one who has chosen alignment over hesitation. Heaven reads them as covenant, not comment. Every number and word you release in faith has sound in the spirit. My answer stands, vibrates like a seal, steady, immovable, final. It tells every opposing voice, every lingering doubt, this one has made their choice. Angels record it, and resistance recognizes it. So, when your heart whispers those words, I know this, you are joining the eternal rhythm of obedience. The war quiets. Heaven leans closer, and the story turns its page. There are moments when heaven equips you in silence, and the weapons you need are not forged in ease, but in endurance. Every chosen one is armed differently, not with blades or shields, but with invisible instruments of divine warfare, faith, prayer, the word, and compassion that disarms hatred. You've been carrying these weapons longer than you realize. Arya discovered this during one of her darkest nights. Her prayers felt weak, her words dry. Yet when she whispered even a single verse, something in the atmosphere changed. She couldn't see it, but she could sense it like a faint tremor through her chest. a vibration from heaven, responding to her faith. That's when she realized, words born from truth never return empty. You too have been given these same weapons. Your faith is not fragile, it's fire. Your prayer is not small, it's sound. Every time you speak life instead of fear, you draw heaven's sword. Every time you worship when worry wants to win, you send ripples through darkness. You don't have to fight louder, you only have to fight wiser. Some weapons are loud, but the greatest ones are silent. Forgiveness, patience, humility. Arya learned that humility breaks chains faster than pride ever could. She once said, "I used to fight to prove myself right. Now I fight to stay aligned." That's the posture of a warrior who knows victory begins within. As it is written in the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 11, "Put on the full armor of God, so that you can stand against the devil's schemes." Those words are not ancient metaphor, they are present instruction. The armor isn't heavy metal, it's light woven from obedience. The helmet of salvation guards your thoughts. The shield of faith catches lies before they pierce. And the sword of the Spirit, the word, cuts through confusion like lightning through fog. But remember, even the strongest soldier must return to camp to rest and resupply. Your soul needs spaces that restore it. You can't pour from an empty vessel. That's why connection matters. Light isn't meant to burn alone. Arya often described this journey as being part of a constellation. Each star shines individually, but together they form a pattern that guides others home. That's what this space is meant to be, not a performance, but a constellation of chosen ones, lighting the sky for those still lost in night. If these messages have strengthened you, if they've reminded you of what's still sacred inside you, then help the light stretch farther. When you like this message, it's like placing another candle on a window for travelers who can't find their way. A single spark can become a beacon when enough hearts carry it forward. And when you share, it's more than a gesture, it's participation. Sharing is like tossing a rope into the storm so another soul can hold on. You never know whose silent cry your action might answer. If you found peace here, a place where your spirit can exhale, then subscribe. Not out of obligation, but out of belonging. Subscribing is like finding a lighthouse you can always return to when the waves rise again. It says, "This is where my faith feels heard." And if your heart ever feels stirred to give, donate, not out of pressure, but out of partnership. Giving is like pouring oil into a lamp so it doesn't go dark for others still searching. Each offering, no matter how small, becomes fuel for another flame. It's not about transaction, it's transformation. You become part of heaven's relay of light. Nothing here is demanded. Everything is invited. The beauty of generosity is that it mirrors heaven freely received, freely given. Arya once said, "Every time I give, I build a bridge I may never cross, but someone else will." That's what giving does. It builds bridges made of light. So if this space has blessed you, let gratitude move through you in any form it chooses: a like, a share, a prayer, a seed. Let it be natural, like rain returning to the ocean it came from. No pressure, just purpose. Remember, chosen ones fight not only with faith, but also with fellowship. Your support keeps this light alive. Your kindness keeps it warm. Together, we forge a sanctuary where weary souls can find rest. And in doing so, we make the unseen war a little brighter, a little lighter. Arya once wrote in her journal, "When I stopped seeing my giving as loss and started seeing it as legacy, my life became larger." You're not losing when you share or give, you're expanding. You're letting heaven flow through your hands. And as this message continues to travel, as every small act of support keeps this beacon alive, may you feel heaven smiling. For the same fire that fuels these words burns also within you. Keep your armor close. Keep your heart soft. And never forget, the battle may be fierce, but you are fully equipped, fully covered, and never fighting alone. Every chosen one must walk through a season that feels like exile, a time when the world forgets your name, and heaven hides your platform. That is not punishment, it is training. The desert has always been God's classroom, in silence, in stillness, in the places no one applauds. He shapes warriors from dust and disappointment. Arya learned this during the years. No one saw her. Opportunities dried up, doors closed, and her prayers seemed to echo back unanswered. She began to wonder if she had somehow stepped out of divine favor, but what she couldn't see was that heaven hadn't abandoned her, it had enrolled her. God trains his strongest soldiers in secret. When you feel overlooked, it's often because heaven is building something in you that must grow beyond validation. Arya's loneliness became her sanctuary. In the absence of noise, she learned to hear the whisper of God clearly. She started to recognize that waiting wasn't wasted time, it was sacred time. There is a rhythm to divine development. Before David faced Goliath, he fought lions and bears in solitude. Before Moses led nations, he learned humility in the wilderness. Before Jesus began his ministry, he spent 40 days unseen. The pattern repeats because the preparation of greatness always happens in isolation. When you're hidden, you're being refined. Every tear becomes oil. Every silence becomes sharpening. You're not being ignored, you're being entrusted. God doesn't send untrained soldiers into battle. He hides them until their hands can hold what their hearts once prayed for. Arya used to ask, "Why does it hurt so much to be invisible?" The answer came slowly. Because you're dying to the need to be seen. Visibility without maturity destroys destinies. The desert strips away pride, the craving for attention, the fear of rejection, all so that when God finally lifts you up, you won't mistake the platform for the purpose. In hidden seasons, small things become holy. The ordinary becomes sacred when you realize its practice for the extraordinary. Every time Arya chose integrity when no one was watching, heaven took note. Every time you forgive quietly, serve faithfully, or stay kind while misunderstood, you're proving ready for more. We are reminded in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 11, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. End quote. That's the essence of this season training. Painful, necessary, purposeful. The pain isn't there to break you, but to build muscle memory for obedience. You're learning to stay steadfast, to act from conviction instead of applause. Hidden seasons also reveal motives. When the applause fades, the real why of your obedience is tested. Do you serve because you're seen, or because you're sent? When you can worship without audience, heaven knows you're ready for assignment. Arya's transformation began the day she stopped asking, "When will my time come?" and started saying, "What are you teaching me here?" That shift changed everything. The wilderness stopped feeling like a cage and started feeling like a workshop. Her prayers turned from complaints to conversation. That's the quiet miracle of the hidden years. You stop striving for arrival and start living in alignment. God's goal was never to rush you to the stage. It was to root you so deeply that storms can't move you. You're not waiting to begin, you're becoming. You may not see results yet, but results are not always visible. Seeds grow underground long before they pierce the soil. The silence that frustrates you today is feeding your roots for tomorrow. Heaven hides you not to punish, but to prepare. Arya began to notice small changes. Her peace was stronger, her discernment sharper, her reactions softer. The very traits she prayed for weren't delivered overnight. They were carved through time and trust. Hiddenness had become her holy place. So, if you're in that season, if you feel unseen, unheard, unnoticed, don't despise it. You're not forgotten, you're being refined. This is your personal Gethsemane, your sacred ground of growth. What God plants in private, He reveals in power, and one day, when the silence finally lifts and heaven whispers, "Now," you'll understand why it took so long. Every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every lonely night, they were not delays, they were deposits. God doesn't waste wilderness. The desert you dread is the very soil that will produce your destiny. And when the day comes, you'll step out of the shadows, not bitter, but brilliant, carrying the fragrance of the desert as proof you survived it. What once felt like burial will reveal itself as planting for glory. There are moments when the atmosphere shifts and you can sense something unfolding not around you, but within you. It's subtle at first, a lightness after long heaviness, a sudden peace where confusion once lived. This is what it feels like when heaven begins to unveil fulfillment. The waiting wasn't punishment, it was preparation for glory. Arya knew that feeling. For years, she walked through what seemed like endless delay. Her prayers circled the same mountains, her faith flickered between belief and fatigue. But one morning, she woke with a strange stillness, not excitement, but certainty. She didn't need to see results to know something had shifted. It was as if heaven whispered, "Now you are ready." When heaven speaks, "now," everything changes. The doors that resisted you swing open. The opportunities you chased begin to find you. People who once ignored you suddenly remember your name. It's not magic, it's timing. When divine order meets obedience, manifestation follows naturally. But don't mistake this next phase for comfort. Glory carries weight. The blessing you longed for will require strength to sustain. That's why God took His time. He wasn't preparing it for you, He was preparing you for it. Arya soon discovered that answered prayers come with assignments. The platform she once dreamed of wasn't about her voice being heard. It was about God's voice being amplified through her obedience. The harvest she entered wasn't for applause, but for stewardship. That's what happens when you grow in grace. Your purpose stops revolving around you and begins revolving around others. Heaven speaks through the prophet Haggai. Chapter 2, Verse 9. The glory of this present house will be greater than the glory of the former, and in this place I will grant peace, declares the Lord Almighty. That promise isn't about buildings, it's about becoming. You are the house. The peace you feel rising in you, is evidence that the next chapter has already begun. Arya used to wonder why the old version of her life had to collapse before the new one appeared. But then she realized foundations must be cleared before reconstruction. God doesn't build on old ruins. He resurrects through renewal. That's what's happening in you right now. The chapter that once defined you has finished its purpose. The pain of the past is now fertilizer for your future. What once buried you will now bloom through you. Still, with new glory comes new guardianship. You must protect what you've been entrusted with. Peace must be guarded like treasure. Not everyone who clapped for your comeback deserves access to your covenant. Arya learned to stop explaining her growth to those still committed to misunderstanding her. Some prefer the old version of you because it was easier to control, but you were never meant to live caged by others' expectations. The weight of glory requires humility. Heaven measures success differently, not by applause, but by obedience and peace. If peace remains even when people leave, you are still on the right path. And this new season will stretch you. God will ask you to plant even in abundance. Talkie even after receiving. You'll discover that prosperity isn't about accumulation, it's about circulation. The more you pour out, the more heaven refills. You are entering that phase now where overflow becomes your normal. The same God who restored you will now release through you. You are no longer surviving, you are serving as a conduit of light. If this truth resonates deep in your spirit, if you can feel that quiet confirmation saying, "Yes, this is my new season," mark it with faith. Type Mati Masrim Vishtaim below. It's not coincidence, it's covenant, a prophetic number of partnership and alignment between heaven and earth. When you type that number, don't do it out of habit. Do it as declaration. It's your way of saying, I agree with the new. You're not just writing digits, you're recording destiny. Because this moment marks more than transition, it marks transformation. You've endured the storm. You've passed the test. And now, heaven calls you to rise into rest. The glory of the latter is here, and peace has taken its rightful place within you. And when you type 222, you're not writing random numbers, you're echoing agreement in heaven's language. 2 represents covenant, unity, alignment. Repeated. It amplifies divine partnership, your spirit walking in rhythm with divine purpose. It's heaven saying, we move together now. Every time you see that number again on a clock, a page, a receipt, let it remind you that alignment remains. You're no longer chasing timing, you're flowing with it. Heaven isn't distant anymore, it's synchronized with your steps. The deeper you walk with God, the quieter. His methods become, miracles shift from lightning to breath, from spectacle to subtlety. You begin to realize that his greatest work often happens in silence, in the unseen corners of your surrender, in the still places where your will finally bows. Arya discovered this truth in the aftermath of exhaustion. After years of striving, fasting, and fighting unseen battles, she reached the end of her strength. Her prayers became fewer words and more sighs. Yet somehow, in that weakness, she felt a strange warmth rise from within, not her strength returning, but his strength revealing itself. She remembered the scripture that once puzzled her, but now became her lifeline. As the apostle wrote to the Corinthians, second letter, chapter 12, verse 9, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And That verse no longer sounded poetic. It felt personal. Grace wasn't an abstract idea. It was oxygen. The weaker she became, the stronger his presence grew. For the first time, she understood that surrender isn't losing power, it's gaining purity. You've likely walked through your own version of that realization when you had nothing left to prove, nothing left to hide, nothing left to force. That's where divine strength meets human limitation. God waits for that moment. Not because he delights in your weakness, but because only an emptied vessel can be filled without resistance. We are taught to equate strength with control, but heaven defines strength as trust. Arya had to unlearn the world's language of self-reliance. Each time she reached her end, grace began. It didn't come with noise or announcement, but with peace that whispered, "You can stop fighting now. I've got it." Learn. Grace moves differently. It doesn't always remove pain, but it transforms how pain functions. It turns burden into bridge, suffering into sensitivity. Every ache you've carried has softened your heart. In places pride once hardened, that tenderness is evidence that grace has been at work. When Arya finally stopped trying to fix herself, she noticed change flowing naturally. Her thoughts became quieter, her heart lighter. It wasn't because she discovered new strength, but because she stopped resisting divine flow. Grace doesn't need your perfection, only your permission. Many people mistake grace for leniency, but it's far more sacred than that. Grace isn't permission to stay broken, it's power to become whole. It's the current that carries you across waters too deep to wade alone. There were days Arya still stumbled, still doubted, still cried. Yet even then, she could sense that grace was near, not judging her for falling, but steadying her as she stood again. That's what grace does. It meets you in your fall, but refuses to leave you there. Grace also teaches rhythm. It shows you how to move with divine timing rather than against it. Arya began to live slower, to listen more, to measure success, not by outcomes, but by peace. Every time she felt overwhelmed, she would pause and whisper, "Grace, take the lead." And somehow, everything began to align again. That's the secret. Every chosen one eventually learns strength is not about how loud you roar, but how quietly you endure. Grace gives you power without aggression, stability without striving. It lets you walk through storms with serenity because you know you are carried, not crushed. If you look back, you'll see it too, the moments that should have broken you but didn't. The nights when despair sat at your doorstep, yet you woke with hope again. That was grace walking you through valleys you didn't even realize you were in. Arya began to see grace everywhere, in the kindness of strangers, in the timing of opportunities, in the peace that arrived for no logical reason. The longer she walked with God, the more she recognized that grace wasn't an occasional rescue, it was a constant rhythm. You are moving in that rhythm now. Even your delays have been soaked in mercy. Even your mistakes have been repurposed for wisdom. Grace doesn't erase your history, it redeems it. The very chapters you once hid will one day heal others. And the most beautiful part, grace is still growing. What you feel now is not its limit, but its introduction. It will continue to expand as you release more control, as you lean deeper into love. So, rest, breathe. The pressure to be perfect has already been lifted. You are no longer performing for heaven, you are partnering with it. Every step you take, even the trembling ones, is held by grace. In the end, that's what it means to be chosen, not that you are flawless, but that you are fiercely loved, not that you never fall, but that you never fall beyond reach. Grace is your atmosphere now, unseen, unending, unearned, yet entirely yours. There comes a point when the journey of the chosen turns from survival to steadfastness. The storms no longer terrify you, they teach you. The battles no longer surprise you, they shape you. You begin to realize that faith was never meant to remove hardship, it was meant to refine endurance. Arya once thought faith was a shield that would keep pain away. But the longer she walked with God, the more she understood. Faith doesn't always prevent fire. It preserves you inside it. The flames that once threatened to consume her began to forge her into something unbreakable. The same storms that frightened her became the very proof that she could not be moved. It's strange how the soul matures in struggle. The seasons that looked like loss were actually lessons in resilience. Each disappointment became a new layer of strength. Each heartbreak added to her capacity for compassion. Suffering became sacred because it revealed what comfort never could: the reality of endurance birthed by faith. We read in the book of Revelation, chapter 2, verse 10, "Be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life." And those words aren't an exaggeration, they are an invitation. Faithfulness isn't proven in moments of ease, but in moments when obedience costs something. To carry the crown of life, one must first carry the cross of persistence. Arya began to live differently once she embraced that truth. She stopped asking for lighter burdens and started asking for stronger shoulders. She understood that God's promise of victory wasn't protection from trials, it was the assurance that no trial could destroy her purpose. The chosen learned to walk with quiet endurance, not dramatic, not loud, but steady. It's the strength of those who've cried without witnesses, worshipped without applause, and stood firm without recognition. This is the kind of strength heaven trusts, the kind that doesn't need an audience to remain obedient. Endurance is more than patience. It's perseverance with purpose. It's the willingness to keep building even when no one sees progress. To keep loving even when others don't respond. To keep believing when results seem delayed. Heaven calls that faith mature. Arya once described endurance as dancing with the weight. She said it's like learning to move gracefully while carrying something heavy. It doesn't get lighter, but you get stronger. That's how faith feels after refinement, not effortless, but élégant under pressure. In endurance, there's a peace that surpasses logic. You stop trying to escape the process and start trusting its necessity. You understand that pruning isn't punishment, it's precision. God trims what hinders fruit, not what hinders comfort. If you look closely, endurance is stitched into every story of greatness. Noah waited decades for rain that had never fallen. Joseph held faith through betrayal and prison. Esther risked everything for her people. None of them saw immediate reward. Yet each step was sacred. They endured, and their endurance turned obedience into legacy. Arya began to view her struggles differently. Instead of asking, "Why me?" she started asking, "What is this building in me?" That question changed everything. Her pain became her teacher. Her scars became her testimony, and her patience became her prophecy. You, too, are being shaped for endurance. Every delay, every detour, Every disappointment is training your spirit to hold weight without breaking. You are being prepared for the kind of glory that demands stability. There will still be moments of exhaustion, nights when prayers feel dry, days when progress seems invisible. But remember this, stillness does not mean stagnation. Even when nothing seems to move, roots are deepening beneath the surface. Endurance doesn't shout, it breathes. It's the calm assurance that says, "Even here, I will not quit." When the winds rise, you won't fight them, you'll lean into them, knowing that wind only strengthens trees with firm roots. Arya's greatest transformation came when she realized she no longer needed constant reassurance. The strength she once begged for had quietly grown inside her. She wasn't chasing peace anymore, she was carrying it. That's the hidden beauty of endurance. It doesn't remove storms, it teaches you how to stand still in them. It trains your heart to remain faithful in fluctuation, grateful in grief, and hopeful in hardship. And in that steadfastness, you discover the most profound truth of all, that endurance itself is worship. It's how the chosen say to heaven, "I still trust you. Even here, And when the storm finally quiets, you'll see what endurance has built: a heart unshaken, a faith unbreakable, a peace untouchable. You'll realize the storm never won. It only revealed the strength that had been hidden within you all along. When endurance matures, something extraordinary begins to happen. You no longer live in survival mode. You start living in surrender. Your prayers shift from "God, change this" to "God, use this." You begin to see purpose woven through everything, even the things that once made you weep. That's when your spirit becomes light enough for heaven to move through it freely. Arya reached this place quietly. It didn't arrive with applause or sudden breakthrough, but with a steady awareness that her entire life had become a vessel. She was no longer trying to make things happen. She was learning to allow them to let God write her story with divine handwriting. Even when the letters were carved through loss, that's what surrender feels like. Heavy in the beginning, holy in the end. You realize control was never peace, and release was never defeat. It's freedom disguised as letting go. Arya said one night in her journal, "I used to fear that if I stopped holding everything together, it would all fall apart. But when I finally let go, I discovered it was God holding me together all along." The voice of God thundered in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 6, "Showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments." That verse isn't about rules, it's about rhythm. It reveals that every act of love, every decision of obedience, ripples through generations you may never see. Surrender doesn't end with you, it extends beyond you. The peace you cultivate becomes inheritance for those who follow. When Arya finally understood that, her perspective changed. She stopped striving to make impact through noise and began sowing through presence. Her life became her message, not by trying to be perfect, but by choosing peace in imperfection. This is how the chosen transform the world, not by shouting louder, but by loving deeper. Every moment of compassion becomes a seed. Every word of kindness becomes a bridge. Every prayer whispered for another becomes a thread in heaven's tapestry. And yet, even light needs tending. Flames go out when neglected. So, as this message reaches you, think of this space not as a sermon, but as a fire we gather around. It flickers only because hearts like yours keep it alive. When you like these words, It's like placing another log onto that fire, small, but vital. It keeps the warmth reaching those who might wander in cold nights, searching for meaning, for direction. When you share, imagine it as opening a window in a dark room. Someone miles away might see the light and realize they are not alone. And if something in this message touched your heart, leave a word below, even a simple Amen or I feel this. Commenting is like carving your initials on a tree of faith. It tells heaven, I was here, and this truth reached me. No, subscribing, that's not just a click, it's a returning. It's saying, I know where to come when I need light again. Think of it as tracing a path back to the fire so that when the storm hits, you know where warmth waits. And if ever your spirit stirs to give, treat it not as transaction, but as participation. Donating is like pouring oil into a shared lantern, not for one to shine brighter, but for all to see clearer. Every drop you pour keeps this flame alive, reaching places words alone cannot go. No one here is asking, only inviting, because true giving cannot be forced, it must be felt. When you give from peace, not pressure, it becomes worship. Arya once said, I never give to fill a need, I give to echo a miracle. Every act of kindness you release, whether through a word, a prayer, a seed, or a share, carries eternal weight. You might never see its full impact, but heaven measures it in lives touched, not in numbers counted. So, as this light continues to travel through screens and souls, may it carry warmth, not demand. May it remind you that you are part of something living, a constellation of chosen ones, keeping hope alight in a weary world. When you engage with love, you're not fueling a project, you're nurturing a movement. When you give, you're not losing, you're expanding. When you share, you're not amplifying a voice, you're multiplying light. Arya once stood by the ocean and said, every wave that leaves the shore thinks it's leaving forever, but the ocean always brings it back. Larger, stronger. That's how generosity works. What you release in love always returns, transformed. So, let every gesture be your wave, your contribution to this tide of hope, faith, and fire. Together, we keep the flame burning, not as duty, but as devotion, and as it glows brighter, may you remember, the same fire you help sustain is the one that warms your own spirit. You are not a spectator here, you are part of the miracle. There comes a moment in the journey when the chosen finally understands that power does not come from striving, but from stillness. All the noise, all the chasing, all the battles, they were never about proving worth. They were about learning dependence. When the storms quiet and the striving fades, what remains is a heart aligned with the spirit. Calm, yet capable of moving mountains. Arya once believed that strength meant movement, constant progress. Visible momentum. Measurable results. But as the years unfolded, she realized that true strength often appears motionless. Some of heaven's greatest victories happen while you stand still. The outer world may see nothing, yet the inner realm trembles because peace has taken command. That's what divine alignment feels like. It's not passivity, it's power under perfect control. When you are aligned with the spirit, resistance loses influence. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop forcing and start flowing. As declared in the book of Zechariah, chapter 4, verse 6. Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord Almighty. Those words are not a dismissal of effort, but a revelation of source. It's not your will that wins battles, it's His wind. Everything that once felt impossible begins to shift when you stop pushing from your own strength and start partnering with divine current. Arya learned this in a season when every door seemed shut. She had the talent, the plan, the preparation, yet nothing moved. Frustration grew until one day she prayed differently. If it's not you, I don't want it. Move what you will. Close what you must. It was surrender disguised as exhaustion. But that prayer unlocked everything. Within weeks, doors began to open, not the ones she had been pounding on, but the ones she didn't even know existed. People crossed her path unexpectedly. Opportunities aligned without effort. It was as if heaven had been waiting for her to stop pushing so the river could finally flow. That's the paradox of divine flow. You find momentum only when you stop manufacturing it. The Spirit does not respond to pressure. It responds to presence. When your heart rests in alignment, creation cooperates. The same wind that parted the Red Sea still moves for those who trust. The world teaches that progress is earned by exhaustion. Heaven teaches that progress is birthed through surrender. Rest is not retreat, it's realignment. In stillness, heaven whispers direction that noise could never reveal. Arya began to live in rhythm with that revelation. She stopped measuring success by pace and started measuring it by peace. Her mornings grew quieter, her prayers simpler. She no longer tried to make miracles happen. She simply stayed available for them. And in that quiet, everything changed. She began hearing the Spirit in ordinary things, in the hum of morning air, in a stranger's kindness, in her own heartbeat. Life stopped feeling like a chase and started feeling like a dance. Each step led naturally to the next, guided by unseen timing. That's the essence of divine alignment, moving without striving, trusting without seeing, resting without retreating. The chosen do not need to push the river, they learn to float with it. Knowing the current knows the way. Arya's journey became lighter, not because life grew easier, but because her resistance dissolved. She no longer demanded explanations for delays or reasons for redirections. Her faith matured into quiet confidence. If it's His will, it will flow. If it's not, I will still be held. You are being invited into that same rhythm, a way of being where your spirit stops wrestling and starts resting in divine flow. You'll know you've entered it when peace begins to replace pressure. The urge to prove fades, and the need to perform falls away. What remains is clarity, the knowing that nothing forced can last, and nothing meant for you can be missed. Even in stillness, you will move mountains. Even in quiet, you will carry thunder. For the Spirit within you does not shout, it shapes. It works through you gently, powerfully, perfectly. So pause, breathe, and release the need to push. The battle is no longer yours to fight, it's heaven's to finish. You are not behind, you are becoming. You are not delayed, you are aligned. And when the next door opens effortlessly, peacefully, precisely, you will recognize the rhythm. It was never about your might, never about your plan, but always about His Spirit moving through a surrendered heart. Every journey leads to revelation, not of what you have gained, but of who you have become. The path of the chosen was never about distance or achievement. It was about transformation. You were being shaped all along, refined through fire and silence, until your heart could mirror heaven without distortion. Arya reached this understanding slowly. One morning, she looked back and realized that every unanswered prayer, every detour, every delay had been intentional. The map was never broken. It was divine in its design. Even the pain had purpose. What once felt like loss now looked like preparation. The journey didn't make her harder, it made her whole. Her eyes saw clearer, her spirit breathed freer, and her heart moved in rhythm with grace. She didn't need proof anymore. Peace was enough. That's when she knew she had crossed from striving into sovereignty, from believing in God to becoming what God had always seen in her. As proclaimed by the One seated on the throne in the book of Revelation, chapter 21, verse 5, "Behold, I am making all things new." End quote. Those words weren't distant prophecy, they were personal reality. The new wasn't just a season, it was her. The old self had dissolved quietly, and in its place stood someone unrecognizable to the world, but perfectly known to heaven. You, too, are stepping into that newness. You may not even feel it yet, but something eternal has shifted. The version of you that doubted, feared, and questioned no longer reigns. You're walking now in the truth that pain did not disqualify you, it crowned you. The crown of the chosen is not made of gold, it's forged from endurance. Every tear became a gem, every prayer a thread, every surrender a seal. Together, they formed the evidence of your becoming. Arya often said, "I thought my strength was my story, but now I know my surrender was the real victory." Her words echo through every chosen one who learns that grace is not the absence of struggle, but the ability to stay soft while standing firm. Look around you. Everything you've endured has shifted how you see. The storms didn't end your light. They purified it. The fire didn't consume you. It clarified your core. You've become the kind of person who doesn't just survive seasons, you sanctify them. And in that sanctification, you find stillness. You no longer rush ahead or fear falling behind. You understand that heaven's pace is perfect, that destiny cannot be delayed when obedience remains. Every step you've taken, even the trembling ones, has carried eternal weight. Arya began to live slower after that realization. She woke each morning with gratitude, not for what was given, but for what remained: breath, peace, awareness. She spoke gently, walked softly, and treated every moment as sacred, because she had finally understood. Heaven is not a place you reach, it's a presence you carry. And that's where you stand now, carrying eternity within mortal breath. Walking through a world that doesn't yet realize it's being changed by your light. You are no longer just chosen, you are commissioned. Your story is no longer about rescue, it's about release. Through you, heaven continues its work on earth. The war in the spirit that once raged for you now moves through you. Angels that once fought to protect you now fight beside you. You are no longer the trembling one on the battlefield. You are the torchbearer, leading others through the dark. Arya knew this when she stood at the edge of the sea one final time. The waves that once frightened her now looked like old friends. Each one reminded her of seasons that rose and fell, yet somehow always carried her back to shore. She whispered into the wind, "Everything I lost was leading me home." Oh, That's what divine restoration feels like, not a sudden miracle, but a slow unveiling of meaning. You see it now, don't you? The war was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to awaken you. Heaven and hell wrestled over your destiny because your very existence carries eternal weight. And now, as this chapter closes, your spirit stands taller. You've walked through fire, danced with delay, and wrestled with silence, yet you are still here, shining with quiet authority. The battle was real, but the victory is lasting. All things are new. You are new, and heaven smiles, because the chosen has remembered who they are, light wrapped in flesh, faith made visible, eternity breathing through time. And now, as this message settles into your heart, take a moment to breathe. You've journeyed through revelation, through war, through waiting, and through wonder, and yet, somehow, you're still standing. That means heaven isn't finished. It's unfolding. This isn't goodbye. It's continuation, a living reminder that light doesn't end where words do. It travels through you, through me, through every soul brave enough to believe that something sacred can still rise from broken ground. If this message has stirred something inside you, like it not out of habit, but as an act of remembrance, when you it's as if you're lighting a candle on the altar of your own awakening, whispering, "I hear this. I remember who I am." When you share, imagine releasing a lantern into the night sky. Someone, somewhere far away, might see that light and realize they're not alone. Your share becomes a bridge between despair and hope, unseen yet divine. And if these words have been a quiet refuge for your soul, subscribe not for content, but for connection. It's like leaving a light on in a window so you can always find your way back when the world grows dark. If your heart ever feels moved to give, donate not as duty, but as devotion. Think of it as pouring oil into a shared flame, not for one to shine brighter, but for all to see clearer. Your offering becomes warmth for someone still searching for light. And before you go, leave a word below, not for me, but for heaven to witness. Even a simple, "still standing," or "I receive this," becomes a stone in the altar of faith, proof that light found you here. So, as this message closes, let your journey continue with gentleness. May your fire never dim. And may your story remind the world that chosen ones never fade. They illuminate,